When the bolt on the door of my own house clicked shut behind me, I didn't right away realize it wasn't just the sound of a lock. It was the sound of a life snapping in half. My own son and his wife had thrown me out into the brutal, biting cold in nothing but a padded jacket and felt boots with a soul held together by a prayer. And what happened to me in the Black Forest that night made me regret not my impending death, but the fact that I ever called these people my family. Winter came early to the remote lake region that year, and it settled in like a dead weight. By mid-December, the lakes were frozen solid, thick as two palms. At night, the cold was so fierce the old spruce trees in the forest crackled, like someone walking through the woods snapping dry branches. The snow lay deep, blue under the moon. Over the villages, smoke rose from chimneys in straight, unmoving columns, a sure sign the frost would only get worse by morning. Inside my cabin, it was warm. It smelled of birch wood and herbs drying by the stove. But the people sitting at my table that evening were not guests. My son, Glenn, had driven up from the city unannounced with his wife. Alice, his wife, walked in first. Her eyes swept over the low ceilings, the soot-stained stove, the woven rugs. And I saw her upper lip twitch. Just a fraction. The way you wrinkle your nose when you step in something nasty in the yard. Glenn followed, shoulders hunched, avoiding my eyes. He always did that as a kid when he'd messed up and didn't know how to confess. "Hello, Dad," he mumbled, immediately turning away to take off his coat so he wouldn't have to look at me. I set a cast-iron pot of potatoes on the table, sliced some fat back, and brought up a jar of pickled mushrooms from the cellar. My late wife Priscilla had pickled them herself, with oak leaves and horseradish. I was happy to see them. Full old man that I was just happy. I hadn't seen my son in a year, and my grandkids, Matthew and little Liza, even longer. Alice had taken them away, always making excuses about school or being busy. They ate in silence. Alice didn't touch the mushrooms. She poked at her potatoes with a fork and kept glancing at her watch. When I poured everyone tea from the old copper kettle, she placed a piece of paper on the table in front of me. "Harold," she began. And the way she used my first name, cold, businesslike, made my stomach drop. My daughter-in-law had never called me by my first name before. "Harold, we need to have a serious, adult conversation." I put on my glasses, which hung on a string around my neck, and leaned over the paper. The letters swam. A power of attorney. Consent to sell the house and the land. At the bottom, a blank line for my signature. "What is this?" I asked quietly. "It's a way out," Alice said evenly, like she was reading from a script. "Glenn and I are in trouble. Serious financial trouble. And you're out here alone on 70 acres. Carrying water from the well, chopping wood. At your age, it's madness. We found you a wonderful assisted living facility near the city. Warm, clean, doctors around the clock. You'll be fine there." I looked at my son. He sat staring into his teacup, silent. "Glenn," I called. "Do you think so too?" He looked up, and his eyes were cornered, guilty, but at the same time. It's the look of a man who has already made up his mind and is just looking for an excuse. "Dad, what are we supposed to do?" "Alice is right. It's too hard for you out here alone, and we need the money desperately. The house is just sitting empty anyway." "Sitting empty," I repeated. "Your grandfather built this house. I was born in it, and you were born in it, Glenn. Every log here is family to me. I thought my grandkids would come visit here, just like you did when you were a kid. And you want to sell it." Alice pursed her lips. "The kids are in a good school. They don't need the village. Harold, don't complicate things. Sign it, and we part ways peacefully. Everyone walks away happy." "No," I said. I surprised myself at how firm my voice was. "I'm not selling the house. It's not stubbornness. It's all I have left of your mother, Glenn. She hung every curtain in this house with her own hands. I lived here with her for 40 years. I'm not selling." That's when Alice's face changed. The polite business veneer vanished. Her eyes narrowed, and something cold and calculating flooded into them. I involuntarily pushed my stool back. "Fine," she hissed. "If you won't do this the easy way, listen to the hard way. This house hasn't been yours for 6 months." She pulled a folder from her bag, and from it, a copy of a property deed. Remember last year when you signed some papers? They told you it was for firewood subsidies, for benefits. You signed without looking, but it was a deed of gift. The house and the land have been in Glenn's name for a long time. Legally, you're nobody here, just a guest, and it's time for the guest to leave. It felt like I'd been hit in the head with an axe. I grabbed the edge of the table to stand, but my legs gave out. My son held my gaze, and that told me everything. "Dad, come on, don't push it to the extreme," he mumbled. "You'll go to the facility. Everything will be fine. Let him walk it off in the forest. Maybe he'll come to his senses." Alice snapped, standing up. What happened next, I only remember in fragments. Alice threw open the front door, and the biting cold rushed into the entryway, instantly devouring all the warmth. Glenn took me by the elbow, not roughly, almost gently, and that gentleness made me sick to my stomach. He led me out onto the porch like you'd lead a stubborn animal out of a barn. I turned around, wanting to tell him something final, something important, but the door was already shut. The bolt clicked. The very same bolt I oiled every autumn so it wouldn't freeze. I was left standing on the porch of my own house, in just a padded jacket, wearing felt boots on bare feet, the ones I'd put on that morning to do chores. "Glenn," I pounded on the door. "Son, give me at least my sheepskin coat. I'll freeze to death." A curtain twitched in the window. The light in the room went out. They sat down to drink my tea. I stood in the snow. The cold crept through the jacket, hugged my ribs, and dug into my hands. The nearest house was 3 miles away, across open fields. In this snow, in these boots, I wouldn't make it 100 steps. And the frost was tightening its grip. I knew this cold. I'd spent 40 years as a game warden in these woods. I'd seen it all. And then, from behind my own fence, from the black wall of the spruce forest, came a howl. Long, raspy, on a single note. That year, they'd been coming close to the villages. It was a hungry winter. Well, this is it, I thought, pressing my back against the freezing wall of my own cabin. So this is my death. And it didn't come from the teeth of a beast. It came from my own blood. I sank onto the step. The shivering was so violent my teeth clattered like a drum. But I knew the most important rule. If you sit down, you fall asleep. If you fall asleep, you never get up. In half an hour, it would be over. I'd seen frozen people. I knew how it happened. And maybe I would have given up that night, if not for a single thought that suddenly shoved me in the back, like a stranger's hand. Right before she died, 2 years ago, she held my hand and whispered something about the forest cabin, about an old safe under the floorboards. I thought my poor darling was just delirious before the end. But now, her words surfaced in my memory as clear as if she'd just spoken them. In the cabin, under the floor, the truth is hidden. If the kids lose all their conscience, that's where your protection lies. My old hunting winter cabin, 3 miles deep in the thickest part of the woods, where I used to store traps and gear. I couldn't go to the villagers. They'd laugh, or shame me, or simply be too scared to get involved with my family. But the forest I could go to. There were walls there, a little stove. Maybe there really was something hidden. I pulled myself up by the porch railing. The pain in my feet was like nails being hammered into my soles. Every step was a monumental effort, but I walked. I didn't know that from the black depths of the spruce forest, 2 eyes the color of cooling embers were already watching me. An old wolf, whose fate had strangely intertwined with mine 3 years ago, had picked up my trail. Only she wasn't following me to kill me. The beast had her own memory, and her own debt. The forest met me with a deafening, cotton-like silence. When you walk into the deep woods in a dead calm during a heavy frost, the world shrinks to the length of your outstretched arm. The snow crunched under my felt boots so sharply it felt like the whole forest could hear. I followed the old game trail that ran along my fence and deeper into the woods. Under the thick paws of the spruce trees, the snow was lighter, easier to walk through. To keep from passing out, I forced myself to remember. Memory warms you better than any fire. And the first thing that surfaced was where this whole story probably began. 3 years ago. It was just as bitter, late November, only there was no snow yet, just the dry, black frost gripping the earth. I was coming back from a distant patrol when I heard a sound near a ravine that you can't mistake for anything else. The clank of iron, and a low, almost human groan. I climbed down into the ravine. In a poacher's trap, the jaws of steel clamped shut tight. Some outsider had said it. I would never allow such a thing in my woods. A she-wolf was thrashing inside it. Young, lean, gray, with her hind leg crushed dead in the steel jaws. The snow around her was dark with blood. Any normal man in my shoes would have either walked away or put the beast out of its misery. A wolf in the forest is a landowner's enemy. Strangled sheep, torn up chicken coops, the fear they bring. But for some reason, I didn't see an enemy. I saw a living creature in pain. Pain just like I felt when I buried Priscilla. Pain just like when my son first screamed at me over money. "Easy, gray girl, easy," I whispered, pulling an adjustable wrench from my belt, the one I always carried to fix odd jobs. "I won't hurt you. See, I can barely walk myself. Let me help." I spent 2 hours wrestling with that cursed trap in the gathering dusk. The wolf snapped her jaws inches from my hand a dozen times, but every time our eyes met, she froze. The beast seemed to understand. This man was her only chance. When the spring finally gave way and the steel jaws parted, the wolf didn't lunge at me. She collapsed on her side, breathing heavily. Her leg was shattered. I gave her everything in my bag, a hunk of bread and a piece of boiled meat I'd saved for lunch. Then, tearing a strip from my undershirt, I bound her mangled leg. "Live," I told her, patting the rough scruff of her neck. "Everyone deserves a chance." The wolf left, limping heavily on her bad leg. In the snow, she left a trail, 3 clear paw prints, and 1 dragged, smeared streak. From then on, I called her Lamey in my head. Sometimes I'd leave out scraps or bones for her. She'd come, keeping her distance, never showing herself to anyone else. I trudged through the black forest, and a bitter smile twisted my lips. I saved a beast, and the beast didn't abandon me. I raised a son, and my son threw me out to die. Which one of them, I ask you, is the real predator? My consciousness began to slip. The pain in my legs suddenly vanished, and I knew this was the end. It's the worst sign. First you scream from the pain, then comes a deceptive warmth, like someone tucked you in and whispered, "Rest here." Priscilla's face shimmered in the dark between the spruce trees, so clear I stopped in my tracks. "No," I rasped, clinging to the rough bark of a trunk. "I won't sit down. You won't get me yet." And in that exact moment, I felt someone walking behind me. It wasn't the fear of the cold. It was the ancient, primal terror of something standing right at your back. I turned slowly. 10 paces away, under a massive snow-loaded spruce, stood a shadow. Gray, almost indistinguishable from the dark, but 2 yellow eyes, burning from within with a steady fire, glared clearly. The beast took a step forward, and I saw how her right hind leg strangely buckled, leaving that very same smeared streak in the snow. "Lamey," I breathed. In 3 years, she had grown into a massive, powerful animal. She didn't growl. She just looked at the man who had once given her back her life. I dropped to my knees. I had no strength left. "Well, hello," I whispered, and the last, most bitter tear crawled down my cheek, instantly freezing in the frost. "So you've come to take me, I guess. It's better than lying here as a frozen corpse. At least I'll be of some use to someone." I closed my eyes and braced for the pain, for the sharp fangs to close around my throat. But instead of pain, I felt something else. Something warm, heavy, smelling of pine and wild animal, pressed against my side. Lamey didn't attack. She lay down right next to me, pressed tight, and covered my legs with her thick tail. "What are you doing, you foolish girl?" I opened my eyes. "I'm a human, one of the very ones who set the traps for you." The wolf snorted and licked my cheek. Her tongue was rough as sandpaper, but incredibly, impossibly hot. And right at that moment, somewhere in the direction of the village, an engine roared to life. It wasn't rescuers. My own flesh and blood had decided to check on what happened to me, but they didn't know that the old man already had a guard now. Not the cold, not the frost, not human conscience. Inside my cabin, time smelled of a foreign, calculating comfort. Alice sat at the table, stirring her tea in a delicate porcelain cup from the very holiday set Priscilla only brought out for special occasions. The clink of the spoon against the porcelain in the dead silence of the house was deafening. Glenn couldn't sit still. He paced to the window, where the blizzard was howling, then sat down, then jumped up again. Al, what if he? Glenn stumbled, afraid to finish the sentence. The frost is brutal. They promised 40 below tonight. Sit down. His wife cut him off coldly. Stop fidgeting. He's a tough guy, a former game warden, lived in the woods his whole life. He knows the way to the winter cabin by heart. There's a stove, there's firewood. He'll spend the night, cool off, and come to his senses. In the morning we'll come back, and he'll sign like a good boy. But what if he doesn't make it? Glenn almost shouted. Did you see what he was wearing? Felt boots on bare feet. Alice looked up at her husband, and her eyes held not a shadow of pity, only a dry, calculated ledger. Glenn, remember how much you owe, and to whom you owe it. These people don't joke around. This house and land are our only chance to clear the debt. Your father lives in the past. You can't pay the bank with memories. He'll be better off in the facility, where there's care. Here, sooner or later, he'd either carbon monoxide himself from the stove or fall down the well. We're just accelerating what was going to happen anyway. For his own good. For his own good? In the freezing cold. Glenn laughed bitterly. Who are we kidding, Al? We aren't kidding anyone. We are creating circumstances. Alice stood up and walked to the dark window. In the glass, a beautiful, well-groomed woman reflected back, one who knew exactly what everything in this world was worth. She didn't consider herself a monster. She considered herself a rational person bringing order to someone else's messy life. Here's the plan. At 2 a.m., we'll make a scene. We'll go to the neighbors, say the old man's lost his mind, wandered off, and got lost. We'll search for him. At dawn, we'll find him. The blizzard will cover everything. An unfortunate accident, old age, senility. No one will even think we threw him out. Glenn stayed silent. He went into the bedroom. Alice told him to pack up his father's things so that in the morning, when the buyers came to view the house, everything would look ready for sale. The floorboards creaked under his steps, as if the cabin itself was groaning in pain. In the small room, it smelled of dried mint and old books. On the dresser stood a photograph in a simple frame. A young, laughing Priscilla with a bouquet of wildflowers, and he, Harold, still with a black beard, strong in his game warden's cap. Glenn picked up the photo, and his hands trembled. He remembered how, as a boy, his father took him on patrols, taught him to read tracks in the snow, to tell a hare's snare from a fox's trail. How his mother baked blueberry pies, and the whole house filled with their warmth. How happy they had been here. And then Glenn's eyes fell on the edge of the dresser. There lay his father's old notebook in a worn leather cover. He opened it at random, expecting to see hunting notes, firewood expenses, weather logs. He instead saw, on the very first page, written in his father's large, bold handwriting. Today Glenn is 6. Bought him a Betrayal pocket knife, been saving up for a long time. He was so happy he slept with it under his pillow. Lord, give me the strength to raise him to be a man. I ask for nothing else. Glenn slammed the book shut as if he'd been burned. His throat tightened. Al, he yelled, walking out into the main room. Al, maybe it's not too late. Let me run into the forest, catch up with him. He couldn't have gone far. Alice, who was at that moment slipping her late mother-in-law's silver spoons into her purse, didn't even turn around. You aren't going anywhere. Drink some tea or take some valerian, and don't you dare start crying in front of the neighbors. We need confusion, not hysteria. Understand? Glenn looked at his wife, and for the first time in many years, he saw a complete stranger standing in front of him. They didn't suspect that a mile and a half from the warmth of the cabin, the old man they had sentenced to death wasn't just surviving. He was lying there, surrounded by a warmth they couldn't dream of with their electric heaters and radiators. And they didn't know one more thing. In that very folder of documents Alice guarded like the apple of her eye, one single page was missing. A page my Priscilla had hidden many years ago in the forest cabin. in that very cabin where I was now heading, under the guard of the lame beast. The warmth of the wolf was alive, heavy, and it smelled of wet fur, old pine, and honest animal strength. I pressed against Lamy's side and felt, beneath the thick fur, her powerful heart beating in a steady rhythm. One beat of hers, two of mine, frequent and weak. The deadly numbness reluctantly retreated. A prickling, unbearable pain returned to my toes, and that, strangely, was a good sign. It meant the blood was running through my veins again. If it hurts, you're still alive. Well, gray girl, I whispered, my voice sounding like the rustle of a dry leaf. You warmed up the old man. But if we lie here till morning, they'll bury us in snow, and we won't get up again. The wolf seemed to understand. She stood up, shook herself, and a light steam rose from her heated body into the freezing air. She took a few steps deeper into the thicket, where the spruce trees stood so densely they formed a living wall against the wind. She stopped and looked back. Her gaze was insistent, demanding. She wasn't inviting me. She was ordering me. I got to my feet on trembling legs, catching my boots on branches. The felt boots had long since packed with snow and turned into two icy lumps, but I barely felt the cold. My feet were completely numb. Lamy kept looking back, adjusting to my broken, stumbling pace. When I fell, the beast would step close and offer her strong back so I could lean on her and stand up. Why am I walking? I thought, pushing through the ice-covered brush. For what? The house is taken, my son is gone. There's just a stranger with empty eyes. The grandkids are taken away. What awaits me? But somewhere beneath the layers of resentment and cold, a small ember was glowing. Priscilla's words. The truth is in the cabin. I had to make it. Not for the money, but for that final truth my wife had left for me. The forest grew denser. Old pines stood here, so massive it took 3 men to embrace them. The wind didn't howl here. It hummed deep in the canopy. And suddenly, Lamy froze. She dropped to the ground, the fur on her neck standing on end, a low, vibrating growl rising from her throat. I froze behind her. Ahead, about 30 paces away, a light flickered between the trunks. The sharp beam of a powerful flashlight. Hey, is anyone alive out here? A man's voice rang out, muffled by the snow. I already opened my mouth to shout, to call for help, but bit my tongue just in time. I knew that voice. Greg, a local poacher and drinking buddy. A man who would sell you out for a bottle of vodka and bury you under the nearest aspen for 2. No, nobody here, a second voice answered, more sober and resolute. In this blizzard, he couldn't have gone far. He's probably huddled under a fence somewhere. They're just making us run around for nothing. They pay us, so we run, Greg grumbled. The daughter-in-law said, find the old man and make sure he's not breathing. And if he is breathing, help him sleep a little deeper. Serious woman, from the city, doesn't like extra witnesses. A chill ran through me, and this cold was far worse than the frost. They hadn't just kicked me out. They had sent people to finish me off. Lamy tensed like a compressed spring. A wave of fury rolled off the beast. A predator had sensed other predators, the ones who set traps even more cruelly than anyone else. Easy, gray girl. I placed my palm on her head. There are 2 of them, and they have guns. The flashlight beam swept over the treetops just nearby. Look, Greg, stop, one of them said. Is that blood? A smeared streak, like someone's dragging a leg. It's a wolf, you idiot, Greg replied. The lame one walks here, everyone knows. Let's get out of here before we freeze. In this cold, angry wolves will take half your leg off before you notice. We'll tell the woman we found tracks, but the beast went further. The voices faded and finally dissolved into the howling of the blizzard. So, a hunt had been declared for me. And now my enemies weren't just the frost and old age, but armed men hired by my own blood. Lead the way, Lamy, I whispered when the lights vanished. We can't stop now. This is war. And strangely, the fatigue retreated. Something long forgotten awoke inside me. The stubborn instinct of an old woodsman who, in any weather, must reach his destination. Only now, I had to reach not a beast's stash, but the truth. Right now is the perfect time to stop and ask you, what do you think my late Priscilla hid in that forest cabin? And would you have forgiven a son like that? Write your answer in the comments. I really want to read it. And we keep walking. An hour later, the forest suddenly parted. In a small clearing, buried almost up to the roof, stood the old hunting cabin. Crooked, dark, but in that moment, it seemed more beautiful than any palace. Lamie ran to the door and gave a short bark. I took one last step and collapsed onto the threshold. The door was locked with an old padlock. I reached my hand into the secret notch above the doorframe, where Priscilla and I always hid the key. My fingers brushed against cold metal. Got it, I exhaled. And in the exact moment the key turned in the lock, a branch snapped under a heavy boot behind me. I turned around. A man stood at the edge of the clearing. In his hands was not a flashlight, but a short, sawed-off shotgun. Well, old man. A hoarse voice cracked from the cold and fear. We've been waiting for you. It was the son-in-law, the husband of Glenn's daughter from his first marriage. Actually, no. He was just a small-time crook tangled in debts, whom Glenn and Alice had hired for a dirty job. His name was Victor. Pale, city-bred, wearing a leather jacket totally unsuited for the forest, he swayed from toe to heel and held the double-barreled shotgun clumsily. In the moonlight, his face looked like a gray mask. He wasn't a killer. He was just an ordinary coward whom greed and someone else's will had pushed past the line where a person stops being human. "Why are you looking at me like that, Harold?" he sneered, taking a step forward. The snow crunched treacherously loud under his boots. "Glenn and Alice are worried, can't sleep. They said, drive out there. Victor, check on the old man in the forest. Who knows? Forest, cold, wolves, anything can happen. An unfortunate accident, you know." I stood by the door of the cabin, clutching the icy key in my fist. My heart was hammering somewhere near my throat, but there was no fear, only a burning, internal disgust. "I understand, Victor," I said quietly. "I understand that for someone else's 30 pieces of silver, you sold not just me, but your own soul. But you're a lousy shot. Your hands are shaking so much you couldn't even chop a chicken's head off." His face twitched, the words hit the mark. He raised the shotgun, aiming at my dark figure on the porch. "Times are tough, old man," he squeezed out. "Everyone wants to live, and because of your stubbornness, we're all going to the bottom. So don't judge." And in that moment, from the thick darkness behind the corner, a sound rang out. Not a growl, but a dry, bony click of jaws snapping together. Lamie stepped into the strip of moonlight. She didn't lunge immediately. She walked slowly, limping on her bad leg. But in every movement was such gathered power and such calm fury that Victor froze, his finger forgetting the trigger. His eyes widened. A city dweller, he had likely never seen a predator this close. In the dark, the wolf looked huge, the size of a good calf. "Wolf," he hissed, panicking. "Harold, behind you." "This isn't just a wolf, Victor. This is my only friend in this forest. And if you don't put that piece of iron away right now and walk back to whoever sent you, I won't stop her." Lamie growled from deep in her chest, a sound that made the air vibrate. She made a short, feinted lunge, instantly cutting the distance in half. "Damn it!" Victor shrieked, threw the shotgun barrels up to the sky, and fired. The roar rolled through the black forest, the echo bouncing between the pines. And Victor was already gone. He was thrashing through the bushes, forgetting about the house, the money, and the orders. He needed only one thing: to save his miserable hide from the gray phantom with burning eyes. I sank heavily onto the step. My hands shook so badly, I almost dropped the key. Lamie walked up, sniffed my shoulder, and softly snorted, as if asking, "Well, we chased that one off. Let's go get warm." "Thank you, gray girl," I exhaled. The door gave way with a creak. Inside it was dark, smelling of dry herbs, old iron, and dust. But there was no wind, and that was the main thing. I fumbled on the shelf for matches and a candle stub. A tiny flame flickered to life, revealing a sturdy table, a couple of stools, a bench, and a small iron stove in the corner. But I didn't light the stove. First, I went to the corner where, under a loose floorboard, I had once equipped a hiding spot. I pried the edge of the board with my knife. There, wrapped in an oilcloth, lay a folder. I opened it. Tears blurred my eyes, but I forced myself to read. They were letters. Letters to my Priscilla, and letters to me, written in a man's hand by a stranger, and a copy of a will I knew nothing about. As I read, time seemed to stop, and I fell back into the past, into that distant February 20 years ago. The blizzard was even fiercer then. I was still strong, in my prime, returning from a patrol across the lake ice, taking a shortcut. And right near the shore, in an ice hole, I saw a person, a boy, maybe 10 years old. He had fallen through the ice. He must have run onto the first, thin crust, and now he was clinging with all his might to the sharp edge. Despair had already reached for him, pulling his legs down. He had stopped screaming long ago, just wheezing thinly. I dropped to my stomach, crawling with my arms spread wide so the ice wouldn't break under me, and grabbed him by the collar, pulling him out. He was gray, his lips blue, barely breathing. It was Arthur, an orphan from a neighboring village, living with an aunt famous throughout the area for her cruelty. She must have sent him to gather brushwood on the ice in the dead of winter, and the boy fell in. There was no way to carry him to the village. It was too far, and he was freezing in my arms. I wrapped him in my sheepskin coat and carried him to this very cabin. I stoked the stove all night, rubbed the boy, fed him hot water with raspberries, and warmed him with my own body. Arthur was delirious, calling for a mother he never had. Priscilla rushed over on skis as soon as I sent word, bringing hot milk and warm clothes. We nursed him back to health over 2 days, and then he was taken away. People came from the city, took him to a good orphanage. His aunt soon drank herself to death and vanished, and it seemed everyone forgot the boy. Everyone except me and Priscilla. And now, from these letters, I was learning what I had never suspected. My wife had secretly corresponded with Arthur for 20 years. She supported him, gave advice, sent simple village parcels, dried herbs, jam. And he grew up. He grew into that very Arthur Severin, a major businessman whose name had been all over the region in recent years. He built farms, tree nurseries, gave jobs to entire villages. In the folder lay his latest letter, written just a month ago. Aunt Priscilla, I know you are no longer with us, but every day I remember what you and Uncle Harold did for me that night on the ice. You gave me life twice. You pulled me from the hole and didn't let me perish after. If Uncle Harold ever needs help, if those you wrote to me about with such anxiety raise a hand against him, let him just call this number at any time of day or night. I will repay the debt of life. These are not just loud words. This is everything I have that is real. Next to the letter lay a piece of paper with a phone number, and one more document, a deed of gift, for all the land around my house. Land that, it turned out, Priscilla had secretly bought from the collapsing forestry department back in the 90s and registered to Arthur as a trusted proxy. So the kids couldn't drink it away or sell it, with one condition written in the notary's hand. If my husband, Harold, is deprived of the right to live in this house by the will of third parties, all the land and buildings go to a charitable foundation, and the guilty parties forever lose any right to inheritance. This meant one thing. My house stood on someone else's land, and Glenn and Alice, by selling it, were selling thin air. I pressed the letters to my chest. It grew warmer in the cabin, not from the stove I hadn't lit, but from the sudden, clear realization, goodness doesn't vanish. Even if it takes 20 years, even if it's through betrayal, it returns. And then Lamy suddenly pricked up her ears, dropped her head, and gave a short, warning bark. Outside, from the direction of the forest road, the roar of a powerful engine echoed. Not a tractor, not Victor's beaten-up off-roader. A deep, expensive SUV. And right behind it, another pair of headlights approached the clearing. Glenn and Alice weren't going to give up. They had brought people to finalize the sale right here in the forest, assuming the old man was still alive. The little candle in the old cabin flickered, casting dancing shadows on the log walls. I sat on the bench, clutching the oilcloth folder to my chest. I was shivering, but it wasn't the blood-cold shiver of freezing anymore. It was the fever of a man who had suddenly found a reason to keep fighting. Every breath came with a wheeze. My lungs, burned by the frost, ached. I looked at my legs. The felt boots had frozen solid, turning into two icy buckets wrapped in ice. Outside, the roar of the engines grew louder. One heavy vehicle stopped at the edge of the clearing. Two others, judging by the screech of spinning wheels, tried to push closer to the porch. Lamy, who had been sitting by the door, stood up. The fur on her neck turned into a rigid crest, her ears pinned back. She didn't bark. Forest beasts don't bark. She made a sound like iron scraping against stone. Deep, warning, deadly. "Easy, girl," I whispered. "Now comes the crudest frost of all. The human one." The door shuddered from a blow. "Dad, open up." Glenn's voice rang with anger and cold desperation. There wasn't a drop of repentance in it, only the spite of a losing gambler. "We know you're in there." I didn't flinch. I slowly tucked the folder into the deep pocket of my padded jacket. "Harold, don't be stupid." Alice was already screaming. "Victor told us everything. You have some paper." "What? You want to ruin everything?" "Open up. We just want to talk." "Talk," I finally answered. My voice was quiet, but in the ensuing silence, it rang out clearly. "What is there for us to talk about, children? About how you threw me out into the cold and felt boots on bare feet? Or about how much your conscience costs these days, calculated per square meter?" A pause hung behind the door. I could hear them whispering furiously, arguing in hushed, raised tones. Then a third voice spoke. Foreign, smooth, dangerous. "Harold," he began softly. "My name is Edward. I'm helping your children with the paperwork. Let's skip the drama. Your son and daughter-in-law were hasty. I won't argue, but you have to understand them too. They have debts, creditors, a noose around their necks. If you just hand over the papers right now, I promise, by tomorrow we'll buy you a beautiful apartment in the city, with an elevator, hot water, next to a park. You'll forget this forest like a bad dream." "You're lying," I simply said. "Every word is a lie. You didn't come to buy me an apartment. You came for the deed of gift. You've already realized the house isn't yours. The land under it belongs to someone else." A muffled curse came from behind the door. "Break it down, Ed," Alice shrieked. "He won't sign. He's stubborn as a ram. We're done babysitting him. There's a wolf in there." Victor squealed somewhere in the background, having apparently returned. "I'm telling you, a huge wolf. He nearly tore me apart." "Shut up, idiot," Edward roared. "What wolf?" "Just a stray mutt." A scraping sound echoed. They must have found a crowbar or an axe. Blows rained down on the old door. The wood cracked, rock crumbling from the seams. I stood up, leaning on the table. One more minute and they would burst in. But they didn't see what was happening behind their backs at that very moment. At the edge of the clearing, right near the SUV stuck in the snow, shadows emerged from the blackness of the forest. 1, 2, 3. It was the pack. Lamy hadn't been alone all these years. The pack had kept their distance, watching. For the wolves, I, the old man who fed the lame she-wolf, had long been part of their territory. A creature that gives food and poses no threat. But now strangers had entered this territory with iron, with gunpowder, with the stench of malice. And the pack decided to intervene. Edward raised the axe for the final blow and suddenly froze. Sweat poured down his face, despite the freezing cold. From the darkness, dozens of eyes were staring at him. Yellow, green, icy. "Holy Mother," he whispered, dropping the axe. "Alice, Alice, get in the car, quick." But it was too late. The wolves closed into a tight ring around the clearing. They didn't attack. They just stood there, cutting off the humans' retreat. And inside the cabin, Lamy answered with a long, trilling howl that must have turned the blood of those standing in the snow to jelly. And in that moment, the headlights of a massive SUV flashed with blinding light, flooding the clearing with daylight. A door opened, and a tall man in an expensive coat, absurd in this wilderness, stepped onto the snow. That very boy I had once pulled from the ice hole. He walked through the snow calmly, not even looking at the wolves. And the pack parted before him, whether out of respect for his strange, solid confidence, or simply awaiting a silent command from Lamy. Who is in charge here? His voice was full of calm strength. Alice, pressed against the side of her car, tried to feign outrage. Who are you? This is private property. Leave, or I'll call the police. Arthur stopped a few steps from her. He looked at her face, twisted with malice, then at the axe lying by the porch. Private property, he smiled faintly. There's no law here. This land is mine. But the house you are trying to steal from your own father and father-in-law, that is evidence in a criminal case of fraud and attempted murder. What are you talking about? Glenn yelled, peeking out from behind his wife's back. This is my father. We wanted to help him. Help. Arthur stepped toward the door. Harold, it's me, Arthur. Can you hear me? Inside, I pushed the bolt back. The door slowly opened. I stood on the threshold, pale, frostbitten, holding onto the doorframe. But my eyes, they must have been shining. Artie, I whispered. You came after all. He scooped me up in his arms as if I weighed nothing. And I really had become light, just bones and a battered heart. Forgive me for being late, Harold. The roads were buried. I drove as fast as I could. He carried me carefully to the car. Lamy followed, stopped on the porch, swept her gaze over the terrified people, and let out a short sound that seemed almost mocking. Wait. Alice lunged after Arthur. You have no right. He has to sign these documents. We owe people, they'll kill us. Arthur turned around, and under his gaze, she involuntarily stepped back. They won't kill you. You will be judged. I will make sure every step you took tonight is documented. And believe me, it will be much warmer in a prison cell than it was for your father in this forest. He sat me in the back seat, where the seat heaters were already blazing. They won't touch you. I nodded toward my son. My people and your friends will take care of it. Arthur glanced at the wolves standing motionless in a ring. The pack won't touch anyone if they sit quietly in their cars until the police arrive. And the police are already on their way. Only, I'm afraid they won't have enough gas to last till morning. The SUV smoothly pulled away, turning around on the tight clearing. In the rear window, I saw Lamy watch us, and then slowly, with dignity, dissolve into the black thicket. It's over, Harold, Arthur said, covering my freezing hand with his warm palm. You're safe now, but the story hadn't reached its end yet. Because the worst punishment for Glenn and Alice awaited them not here. It awaited them in that long, icy night, in the mirror of their own conscience, which they were about to look into for the first time. Inside the warm car, it smelled of leather and the best scent in the world, living warmth. Arthur turned the seat heaters to the max, and I felt life literally pouring back into my tortured body. My legs, which had been alien, icy blocks 10 minutes ago, began to ache and burn unbearably. It was a good pain, the pain of return. Artie, I whispered. How did you know? I didn't call you. I didn't want to believe it would come to this. He gripped the steering wheel tighter for a moment. Aunt Priscilla took care of everything in advance, even when she was still alive. She left instructions with the notary. If anyone tries to sell the house, notify me immediately and send a copy of the documents. And a month ago, a real estate agent came to your house. The notary called me right away, and I understood where this was heading. I installed cameras in your yard and the entryway. Forgive my presumption, but otherwise I wouldn't have made it in time to prove anything. I shuddered. Cameras? In my house. I saw everything, Harold, Arthur said quietly. How they yelled at you. How they pushed you onto the porch. I was flying in from Moscow at the time. I nearly lost my mind looking at the live feed on my phone. I turned the car around right from the airport and drove here faster than I've ever driven in my life. It hurt to hear that my father's failure, my shame, was recorded on video. But at the same time, a strange relief came. Now there was nothing to prove. The truth lay bare, like a gnawed bone. Meanwhile, out by the cabin, a real human comedy was playing out, slowly sliding into farce. In Victor's beaten-up SUV, the gas ran out first. The engine sputtered and died. The cabin instantly turned freezing. Victor beat his hands against the steering wheel and whined. In Alice's crossover, it was still warm, but she sat without taking her eyes off the window. In the moonlight, the wolves kept their silent watch. One of them, a huge male with a torn ear, stepped right up to the car, stood on his hind legs, and peered through the side window. Alice flinched toward the steering wheel, but no scream came out. Her throat seized. The beast didn't growl. He just looked at her with calm, all-knowing eyes. And in that gaze was more reason than in all her cunning calculations. "Glenn," she hissed at her husband, sitting next to her. "Do something, you're a man." But Glenn didn't answer. He stared straight ahead at one spot, and tears streamed down his cheeks. He wasn't crying from fear of the wolves. He was remembering the pocket knife under the pillow and his father's entry in the worn notebook. "Lord, give me the strength to raise him to be a man." "Video." Edward suddenly spoke up from the back seat, where he had cowered. "This guy said something about a video, and about the land. Alice, you told me the land was ours. If it belongs to someone else, our whole deal is major fraud. Do you understand what this means? 15 years in prison, no parole. Shut up, all of you." Alice's voice cracked for the first time that night. "No one is putting us away. Dad won't press charges. He loves us. He always forgave us." She still clung to this thought like a drowning man to a straw. She didn't know yet that this time there would be no forgiveness. And then the forest lit up with blue and red flashes. Sirens tore through the dead silence. The wolves, as if on command, began to retreat into the shadows of the trees. Lamy, having glanced at the cars one last time, let out a short, almost laughing sound and vanished into the thicket. 5 minutes later, the clearing was full of uniformed officers. Glenn, Alice, Edward, and a shivering Victor were led out of the cars. They tried to play their parts. Glenn mumbled that they were looking for their father. Alice haughtily demanded a lawyer. But when the young investigator with tired eyes handed her the very folder Arthur had taken from the cabin, Alice turned pale. "What is this?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. "A copy of the trust management agreement," the investigator replied. The late Priscilla, many years before her death, transferred all rights to the land and buildings to citizen Severin, with one condition: if her husband, Harold, is deprived of the opportunity to live in this house by the will of third parties, all property goes to a charitable foundation, and the guilty parties forever lose any right to inheritance. "Get in the car." Glenn sank right into the snow, clutching his head in his hands. In the district hospital where Arthur brought me, it was quiet and clean. The doctor examining my legs just shook his head. "Amazing," he told Arthur in the corridor. "With this degree of frostbite, we should be preparing for amputation." But his vessels seemed to have started repairing themselves right there in the cold, as if someone was warming him very strongly and for a long time. Arthur looked out the window at the dark forest in the distance and smiled. He was warmed by the most loyal pack in the world, Doctor. I lay on white sheets. They gave me painkillers, and I drifted into a soft, healing sleep. The image of the lame wolf stood before my eyes, and I remembered how long ago, when I was just a boy, I heard my grandfather say, "Don't offend the forest, Harold. The forest sees everything. It remembers every seed you threw to the birds, every trap you unclamped. When everyone turns away from you, the forest will turn to you with warmth." I used to laugh at the old man's tales. Now I knew it was the truth. And in that half-sleep, Priscilla came to me. Not the frail woman I had escorted on her last journey, but young, in a cotton dress, holding a bouquet of daisies. She sat on the edge of my hospital bed and spoke to me as if she had never left. "What were you thinking, Harold, dying in the snow? I left everything for you, prepared everything a year in advance. Do you think I was blind? Do you think I didn't see who our Glenn was turning into when she entered the house? I prayed for 20 years that I was wrong, but I wasn't. I reached for her and woke up from my own movement. The pillow was wet, but it wasn't hot. There was a feeling that she was holding my hand even from beyond the edge of the world. But the finale of this story was still ahead. There was an unresolved question: what to do with the house, and how to deal with those who, despite all the evil they had done, remained my blood. That night, I made a decision that later shook the entire lake region. I decided to give them a final lesson. Not a lesson of forgiveness, but a lesson of accountability. Morning began with a heavy gray light filtering through the frosty windows. I opened my eyes, not immediately realizing where I was. It smelled of bleach and alcohol, and 4 bags swung above the bed. My legs were heavily bandaged. The pain was gone, replaced by a strange tingling, as if thousands of ants were crawling under my skin. "You're awake." Arthur sat in a chair by the window, dark circles under his eyes, but his gaze was clear. "The doctors say you were born in a shirt, Harold, or you have a guardian angel. The frostbite was severe, but the tissues are alive, recovering. They'll discharge you in a few days." "Artie," my voice rasped. "Where are they?" "In the detention center. Alice is trying to pull strings. Glenn is just silent. Victor and Edward are giving testimony, racing to rat each other out." "I want to see them." Arthur frowned. "That's a bad idea, Harold. They'll press on pity, manipulate you. You know them. That's exactly why I must. I need to look them in the eyes, not as a victim, but as a man who is putting an end to it." The meeting took place 3 days later in the chief physician's office, which Arthur had arranged to borrow for an hour. I was wheeled in a wheelchair. I wore a hospital gown, pale, but my back was straight, and my gaze was such that Alice, who was led in first, involuntarily looked away. Not a trace of her former polish remained. Her hair was tangled, her face gray. Glenn followed, hunched, staring at the floor. "Dad," Alice began, and in her trembling voice, commanding notes still slipped through. "This Arthur of yours wants to destroy us. Tell the investigator you went into the forest yourself, that we didn't kick you out. If you confirm it, they'll drop the case. Glenn's life is on the line, mine too. We'll be crushed." I looked at her and saw not a human, but a calculating machine that even now, at the bottom of the abyss, thought only of one thing: how to wriggle out of it. "And my life, Alice?" I asked quietly. "Those hours in the cold, when I prayed for only one thing, that you wouldn't hear me dying and feel ashamed. And you, at that time, were drinking my tea from the holiday set of my late wife. We just wanted to scare you." Glenn suddenly blurted out, his voice cracking. "So you become more compliant. We didn't think you'd go deep into the forest. We didn't think." I closed my eyes. "You never thought about anyone but yourselves. And in that, Glenn, lies my guilt too. I raised you in love, shielded you from any trouble, thinking kindness breeds kindness. But it just bred entitlement. Enough with the lyrics." Alice snapped, her eyes narrowing. "How much money do you want to drop the charges? We'll sell the house and give you a share." I suddenly laughed. Dry, terrifying. Arthur shifted in the corner. "Money? You're offering me money for my own death?" "No, Alice. There will be no money. And there will be no house." "What do you mean, no house?" Glenn gasped. "This morning," Arthur spoke up, stepping away from the wall. "Under the power of attorney from Harold, and based on the land rights, I gave the order to demolish the structure. The house is condemned. 3 bulldozers are already on their way to the village." A dead silence fell over the office. "What did you do?" Alice whispered. "Everything of value that is dear to Harold has already been removed," Arthur continued calmly. "The rest will turn to ash in a couple of hours." "No," Glenn lunged forward. "Mom's things are there. My childhood is there." "Your childhood," I said bitterly. "You smashed it with a crowbar when you broke down the cabin door, seeing nothing but profit. My soul was in that house, but you drove it out. Now there are only logs there, and I won't let you profit from the ashes of my past. You wanted the house? It's gone. You wanted the inheritance? It's gone. The land belongs to Arthur, and on it, an animal shelter will be built, in memory of the one who turned out to be more human than my own children." Alice lunged at me, her face twisted with hatred. "You crazy old man. You're depriving us of everything. We are your blood. You have no right. I am depriving you of only one thing." I looked at her with infinite fatigue. The illusion that malice can go unpunished. And the right to be a father, I lost that night in the forest. And you, that same night, lost the right to call yourselves my children. The investigator opened the door and gestured to the guard. "Take them away. The conversation is over." When the door closed behind them, I slumped back in the wheelchair. My hands shook. "You did the right thing," Arthur said quietly, placing a hand on my shoulder. "I know, Artie. It still hurts. I looked up at him. Tell me about the wolf. A game warden saw her yesterday at the edge of your plot. She seemed to be waiting for something. And when the ambulance drove past, she went deep into the woods. She knows you're saved. 2 hours later, a roar echoed on the outskirts of the village. Heavy machines crushed the old walls. Neighbors came out of their houses and watched in silence as the history of a family they had known for decades turned to dust. No one judged me. Everyone knew the truth. Everyone had seen how my children ran through the village that night, how they screamed at their father. When the roof collapsed, the wind snatched an old notebook from the debris, the very diary Glenn had flipped through that night. The pages scattered across the snow. On one of them, blown toward the forest, was written in my fatherly hand. The most important thing is not where you live, but who stays beside you when the light goes out. I sat in the car on the shoulder and didn't look at the demolition. I looked forward to where the big city began behind the forest, where a new, quiet life awaited me. But in my heart, the smell of wet fur and the warmth of the forest beast settled forever. And I knew, if I ever got cold again, I would just call out, and the forest would answer. The city met me with an indifferent hum and endless streams of gray cars. After the absolute silence of the forest, this noise seemed hostile, exhausting. Arthur settled me in his clinic, which looked more like a luxury hotel than a hospital. Live palms stood in the lobby, and the nurses smiled so sincerely as if I were their own grandfather. But I felt like an outsider here. I sat in a deep leather chair by a huge window on the 12th floor, looking down at the tiny people. "You've recovered amazingly, Harold," Arthur said quietly, placing a bowl of apples on the table. "Physically, you're almost ready to be discharged. Your new house is ready." "A new house," I echoed. "Artie, I've lived in one place my whole life. I knew every notch on the porch. Now I'm like a ghost, flying between floors, not feeling the ground under my feet." Arthur sat on the edge of the ottoman. "You'll have ground under your feet. I bought that plot in the village. The foundation is already laid, but it won't just be a house. It will be an animal rescue center, named after Priscilla. And for you, I'm building a wing. An exact copy of your old kitchen, with the same stove, even though you won't need it." I smiled, and wrinkles gathered at the corners of my eyes. "You have a wide soul. But tell me, what's going on with them? I see you're holding something back." Arthur sighed. "There's no use hiding the truth from a man who sees right through you. The investigation is over. It uncovered something we didn't even guess. Alice wasn't just rushing to sell the house for no reason. She was using client accounts in her bank for her own schemes, building a pyramid inside a state institution. The sale of your house was supposed to be the patch for another hole in her accounting. When the first audit started, she realized, either she finds the money or prison. Glenn was under her thumb, and she simply wrote you off the ledger as an extra line." I covered my mouth with my palm. "He's not a villain. He's just weak. Weakness is sometimes scarier than malice, Harold," Arthur said harshly. "A villain knows what he's doing. A weak man closes his eyes and floats with the current, until the current carries him to someone else's crime." A knock came at the door. The young investigator with the tired eyes walked in, holding a small package. "Harold, sorry to bother you. We finished inventorying what we managed to save from the house before the demolition. They asked me to give this to you personally." He laid out a few items on the table. An old icon in a darkened silver case, Priscilla's wedding ring, and a faded photograph in a cracked frame. 2 children with bows. No, a boy and a girl, clumsily hugging a puppy. "This is Bowie," I whispered. "Our first dog. Remember, Artie? You fed him when you lived here. Glenn loved him. Where did all this go? At what moment did numbers become more important than living warmth?" The investigator cleared his throat. "There's one more thing. During a search of Glenn's apartment, we found documents of your late wife that were considered lost. Her letters, and one letter addressed to you. It was never sent." He handed me an envelope. I opened it with trembling fingers. Priscilla's handwriting. Round, native. "Harold, if you are reading this, it means I am gone, and our children are completely lost. Don't blame them too much. Such times have come. They teach you to take, but not to keep. I left them one trap. In the cabin, Under the safe, there is a second stash. There are no papers there. There is their childhood, their first drawings, letters to Santa Claus, locks of hair I cut when they were a year old. If they get there before you and don't come to their senses, don't cry over it. It means I failed as a mother. But I believe you will get there first. You are stronger than all of them. You have a forest heart. It doesn't freeze. Loudly, unrestrained, like I hadn't even cried at my wife's funeral. I wasn't mourning my frozen life. I was mourning the abyss into which my children had fallen. They had searched the cabin for money, for deeds. But Priscilla had left them their own childhood, their purity, so that in the most terrible moment of greed, they would stumble upon it and come to their senses. But they didn't stumble. They smashed the door with a crowbar, seeing nothing but profit. In the evening, I asked Arthur to take me to the park. I needed to breathe. We walked slowly along the snow-covered alley. The city noise was muffled by the trees, and suddenly I stopped. On the side of the path, in the shadow of an old linden tree, sat a dog. Huge, gray, with sad eyes. Surprisingly like a wolf. He looked at me without moving, then quietly barked a guttural sound, and limping on his hind leg, disappeared into the bushes. A chill ran down my spine. Did you see that? I asked Arthur. Looks like someone threw the dog out, or it wandered in from the suburbs. Want to catch it? Take it to a shelter? No, I smiled. He isn't lost. He came to visit. The shadow of the forest always follows those whom the forest once saved. I looked up at the sky. The stars in the city were pale, almost invisible. But I knew hundreds of miles away, deep in the black thicket, my Lamie was howling right now. And this howl was not a lament. It was a song of loyalty, which turned out to be stronger than blood ties. Arthur, I said firmly, take me to see them one last time. I want to give them their mother's letters. Let that be their last inheritance. I won't come to them again. The next morning, the visiting room was stifling. Glenn and Alice sat on the other side of the glass, waiting for their father to bring news of their release. Dad, Glenn grabbed the phone receiver. Tell your Arthur to drop the charges. We'll work it off. We'll give everything back. Alice was silent. She looked at me with defiance, and in her eyes, the hope for a deal still glowed. I didn't take the receiver. I just pressed 2 items against the glass. Priscilla's letter, and that very photograph of the 2 toddlers with the puppy. I saw how Alice's face changed when she recognized the handwriting she couldn't possibly forget. I saw her eyes widen, how she slowly sank into her chair, realizing that in that cabin she had ordered to be smashed, there was no wealth. There lay her very last thread to humanity, and she herself had chopped that thread with an axe. Glenn was yelling something, pounding on the glass, but Alice suddenly covered her face with her hands and began to cry. For the first time, without calculation, without acting, there was no hatred or triumph in me, only a quiet, ringing emptiness. Goodbye, I mouthed. When I walked out of the gates, thick snow was falling. The flakes landed on my face, and I didn't wipe them off. By the car, a surprise awaited me. Next to Arthur sat that very gray dog from the park. He sat calmly, looking at me, and in his yellow eyes, the whole world was reflected. He didn't leave. Arthur smiled. He waited by the gate all this time. Looks like you've got a guard dog. I walked up and placed my palm on his hard head. What will we name him? Arthur asked. Shadow, I answered. Because the truth always follows us like a shadow. That same evening, Arthur's lawyer called, and the final secret was revealed. The house in the village was insured by Priscilla for a large sum in favor of the grandchildren. The very same Matthew and Liza, whom Alice and Glenn had locked away in a closed boarding school abroad so the children wouldn't get in the way of their lavish life. I didn't know then that my family hadn't ended with my son's betrayal. It was only just beginning. Winter didn't hurry to leave that year. The February frost gave way to March blizzards, as if nature itself wanted to preserve the purity of the pages I was starting to write anew. I sat in Arthur's office, examining a thick folder with foreign stamps. My hands no longer shook. So, Matthew and Liza, I whispered, sorting through the photos. From the glossy cards, 2 children looked at me. A boy of about 12, with a serious, fatherly gaze, and a girl, small, light, more like Priscilla as a child. They stood near the strict building of a school somewhere in Geneva, with not a hint of a smile, only that unchildish burden that kids get when parents prefer to pay for a boarding school rather than hug them. Alice sent Matthew there 3 years ago, Arthur explained quietly, when he started getting in her way. Liza followed, when she realized a child isn't just a prop for photos, but a responsibility. They paid big money just so the kids wouldn't come home, even for the holidays. My Priscilla. I pressed the photo to my chest. She hadn't been saving this fund for her son and daughter-in-law. She had been saving it to buy her grandchildren out of their golden cage. We've already filed for guardianship. Arthur walked to the window. Given the verdict, the court will be on your side. Alice got 12 years for fraud and attempted murder. Glenn got 7 as an accomplice. Both are deprived of parental rights. 12 years. 7 years. For me, these weren't lines in a legal code. These were the years during which my grandchildren would grow up without ever knowing a mother's warmth. But did they ever have it? Did they have a home before I appeared? When will they arrive? I asked. The plane lands tomorrow morning. The wing in the village is ready. The return was strange. Where my old, crooked cabin once stood, a bright building of wood and glass now sprawled. Above the entrance, a forged sign, Wolf's Heart, Rescue and Memory Center. But the most important thing for me was a small house deep in the plot, hidden by spruce trees. An exact copy of my old kitchen. The same curtains with flowers, the same smell of dried mint. And a miracle of miracles. That very cast-iron stove, which Arthur had ordered to be found in the ashes, restored, and brought here. When a car pulled up to the gates, I went out onto the porch. My heart hammered so hard it was difficult to breathe. The door opened, and 2 figures stepped onto the snow. Matthew held Liza's hand tightly. They looked around with apprehension, accustomed to the cold reception of orphanages. "Kids," I called out, and my voice cracked. The boy froze. He looked long at the gray-haired old man on the porch, and then pulled a yellowed envelope from his pocket. "Grandpa Harold, the one who sent me the dried maple leaf and the letters?" I couldn't answer. I just opened my arms. And a moment later, 2 children, sweeping away the remnants of fear and loneliness as they ran, pressed against me. Liza buried her nose in my padded jacket and whispered, "You smell like pies." Mom only smelled like perfume. "Grandpa, we aren't going away anymore." "Never, my darlings," I exhaled. That first evening, I lit the little stove. Not for warmth. The heating system in the wing worked fine, but for the living fire. Liza sat on a low bench and watched, mesmerized, as the tongues of flame danced behind the open door. Matthew couldn't sit still for long. He kept walking around, touching things. The frame with his grandmother's photo, the old barometer, the copper kettle. As if checking if they were real, as if afraid it would all melt away, like it had once before. I baked pancakes on that very cast-iron skillet. When I put the plate on the table, Liza froze. "Can I?" she asked quietly, and my heart ached. The child was asking permission to eat a pancake in her own grandfather's house. "This is all yours. The stove, the house, and me. Eat as much as you want." Matthew ate in silence, glancing at me from under his brows. And at the end, when Liza was already nodding off, he suddenly said in a voice that wouldn't obey, "You won't give us back, will you? If we break something or behave badly." I walked up and placed my hand on his cropped head. "Remember this, grandson. In this house, no one will ever give you away, no matter what you do. That's what family means. When they love you for the good and don't abandon you for the bad." He nodded, turned away, and I pretended not to notice how his eyes shone. 2 months passed. The village was transformed. Wolf's Heart became home to a dozen abandoned dogs, and beyond the fence, Arthur set up the region's first open-air enclosure park for injured wild animals. I sat on the veranda of the wing. Shadow dozed on the rug beside me. Matthew and Liza helped feed the wards. Life flowed on, calm and just. And suddenly, Shadow lifted his head and growled softly. Not angrily, but as if greeting someone. I looked up. At the edge of the forest, where the thick thicket began, she stood. She had lost a lot of weight, her fur dusted with spring snow. She looked at me without moving, and behind her back, gray shadows flickered. The pack was near. I stood up slowly, walked down the steps, and went right up to the boundary of the plot. "Hello, gray girl," I whispered. "For everything." The she-wolf took a step forward, closing the distance to a few meters. She wasn't afraid. She felt that this land now belonged to both of us. A man and a beast who had both known betrayal and both found salvation. Lamy lowered her head, as if bowing, and then let out a short, clear sound. And from the bushes, two gray, fluffy balls rolled out to her. New lives of the forest. Lamy had brought her children to show the one who once saved her life. As if to say, "Look, we survived." The pack continues. The kids ran out of the house. "Grandpa, look, wolves." Liza cried out and stopped short, seeing my calm face. "Don't be afraid," I said quietly, hugging my grandson by the shoulders. "These are our own." The forest truth came to say hello. Lamy looked at me one last time, turned, and together with her cubs, melted into the thicket. On the melting snow, still lying in the shadow of the spruce trees, a trail remained. 3 clear paw prints, and 1 familiar, smeared streak. I returned to the veranda. My soul had an amazing lightness. All debts were paid, all lies turned to dust. I remembered that terrible evening when the door of my own house slammed shut behind my back. I remembered my son's words, "You'll go to the facility." Then I thought it was the end. It turned out it was only the beginning. The beginning of the path to a real family. The path through an icy hell, to the eternal warmth of the human heart. I took an old mug of tea in my hands and looked at the sunset. When my own children called me a burden and threw me out to die in the cold, I just closed my eyes and prepared for the darkness. But an hour later, I understood there are creatures in this world that do not betray. And sometimes, to find a real family, you first have to freeze in the forest and meet the one everyone around calls a predator. Because the real predator isn't the one with fangs, but the one with emptiness in his soul. There were many springs ahead. And every morning I would wake up not from fear, but from the thud of children's feet on the floorboards and a distant, grateful howl from the depths of the forest. Because kindness is the only track that a blizzard can never cover. Thank you for watching this story to the end. I really want to know your opinion. Would you have trusted your children like Harold did, even without the slightest reason? And would you have been able to forgive? Write in the comments. I read every single one. Take care of those who stay beside you when the light goes out. Until next time.